Okay, we're back. Here we are, Advanced Studies in Selected Topics in the Book of Genesis, Lecture 13, Part 4 of the Sons of God. 4 lectures on this. We'll finish things up, and I think it ends pretty interesting. We'll see if you agree. So we're in the section of the fallen angels view, if you remember. And then maybe you binged series this, 4 of them. And then we're on number 2. The first one was on that they aren't given in marriage, they don't marry in heaven. So now this is, who did God judge? That's what the title is. What was the judgment for? Who? Another objection argues that red text, the fallen angels view, implicates God as unfairly punishing man for wrongs instigated and carried out by demons or devils. That's a major statement there. So it seems to be unfair to punish man for what was instigated, carried out by devils. And you could say the daughters of men, but not males themselves. Black text, surely had angels been to blame for the gross wickedness described in Genesis 6, there would also be mention made of their inclusion in the judgment that followed. Now there is some judgment they talk about in 2 Peter and Jude. Potential judgment, I understand, okay. But just directly following this, nothing mentioned of them. What? Angels. So, however, this argument wrongly assumes that angelic wickedness in Genesis 6 is incompatible with the text assessment of the brutal wickedness of mankind in Genesis 6, 5 through 7. Lee Anderson, who's the fallen angels view advocate. So that's what he says. That angels doesn't say that they weren't involved with this, getting men to do these things. Okay. We still have a will, though, we humans. Regardless of the extent of angelic activity, mankind was evil in its own right. The Lord was fully justified in sending the flood on account of man's sin, even if the full extent of wickedness on the earth also involved angels. Everything we do that's wicked, you could say, involves devils. I don't think everything does, but potentially it could. You never know when it doesn't, when it's just yourself doing the evil without any impetus, instigation by a devil. Furthermore, red text, assuming that 1 Peter, 2 Peter, and Jude refer back to angels who sinned in Genesis 6, then the biblical text is hardly silent on the punishment of the angels. Well, yeah, assuming that, speculating that. Black text, it simply was not the author's purpose to focus on angels any more than necessary in the prologue to the flood. You don't know that. You could say, I'm thinking that it is that. But to say it simply was not the author's intention. You don't know that. But we should never say that, no matter what side of this fence you're on, about anything in the Bible. It surely wasn't God's intention here when he's saying this. Unless you know from the text and the content that it wasn't. But if you're just assuming it, then you have to say, I'm assuming that it surely wasn't God's intention. And that's, you've got to be careful on those assumptions. God questions, says, the oncoming judgment of Genesis 6, 5 through 7 is linked to what took place in Genesis 6, 1 through 4. Yeah, I agree. Only the obscene, perverse marriage of fallen angels with human females would seem to justify such a harsh judgment. Well, if that was really the case, then I would say, yeah, there should be some harsh judgment on the angels. But it was a harsh judgment on men because males, compromised and went after the wrong women. John Davis says, the judgment in Genesis 6:6 fell upon men alone. Since the sons of God were the real initiators of the evil, surely they were human rather than angelic, despite what is stated in 1 and 2 Peter and Jude. Yeah. So this is my statement. It was the men. What would it say? Humans. Humans did it. The judgment was on humans. It matches up. Warren Wiersbe, red text. The emphasis in Genesis 6 is on the sin of man and not the rebellion of angels. The word man is used 9 times in verses 1 through 7. And God states clearly that the judgment was coming because of what man or humans had done. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, not the wickedness of devils. Black text, Don Stewart. The context of Genesis 6 emphasizes the sin of humans, not angels, as the reason for the flood. The sons of God were the ones who initiated this sin. Well, that's true. We can say that. We're all in agreement on that. Why weren't angels mentioned in the flood judgment if these sons of God were angels? That's a good question. Or I wrote, or why wasn't the term sons of God used? I guess in the judgment part. I guess that's what I was saying. This leads us to conclude that only humankind was involved in the sin. Man, I agree. Trevor Major. The judgment in verse 3 specifically refers to men and not sons of God or angels. Verse 3. It is inconsistent to argue that God would punish the tempted and not the temptors. For the sentence to be universal and fair, those who are judged must refer to all humanity, Adam, thus incorporating both sons of God and daughters of men. Because the daughters of men were wicked in this too. They accepted the marriages. They were already, in my view, ungodly and wicked. And they should be judged just for that. You say, oh, that's harsh judgment on us. Us wicked sinners. No, it isn't. The focus is on judgment of humans, as Kenneth Matthew notes here, red text. From beginning to end, chapter 6, 1 through 8, concerns humanity and its outcome, not angels and their punishment. And nothing to do with angels, unless you insert it in there. An eisegesis. Black text, the flood is God's judgment against man. And there is no reference to the culpability of angels in there. Amen. There isn't. Well, another objection to the fallen angels' view. These are smaller ones, as you can see. Giants after the flood, and we're going to deal with giants soon, at the end. It is also objected that the fallen angels' view is not necessary to account for the rise of the Nephilim, or Nephilim. I don't know which way to say it, so I might say it both ways each time. I will say Nephilim from now on. Giants, in Genesis 6:4. And that red text. The presence of such hybrid offspring before the flood creates tension with Numbers 13:33, which mentions Nephilim dwelling in the land of Canaan long after the flood. After the flood, after the judgment, after everything's wiped out, you got these giants again. Well, more on this later. Red text, mythology here. That's the last section of this long 4-lecture series. Red text, the arguably most serious objection, the arguable most serious objection to the fallen angels' view is that it opens the door for mythology, black text, and polytheism to invade the biblical text. The biblical text, invaded by mythology. More on this point later. End of Anderson quote. So those are Anderson's quotes there. He says there are some issues here. He's just being fair on that. Another one, objections, is sons versus devils in my title. First section by me. Red text. God clearly could have used angels of God here, that term, angels of God here, in order to clear up any confusion, but instead chose to use sons of God. Not to cause confusion, but if it was indeed angels, angelic beings, fallen angels, God could have used angels of God, or angels. Angels of God shows up in the Old Testament, by the way, black text. Genesis 28. And he dreamed and beheld a ladder set upon the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God ascending and descending on it. 32. And Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. Yeah, we know it's in there. He could have said that. He's used it before. It's not proof. It just adds to a weightiness to things. Ed Elkin says, we have two completely different phrases being used. Angels of God and sons of God. To designate two completely different groups in the book of Genesis. And that's dealing with these two I just read. So, it's in the same book. You say, well, yeah, but it's far away. It is. I agree. It's not the only proof I'm going to use, but it just kind of adds to the weightiness. If you had something that said, Jesus Christ is God, which you don't have those statements, but something pretty close to it, then you can say Jesus Christ is God. And we do have that. But in this, we don't have something saying that, and these were not angels, these were humans. Though I think it's beyond weightiness, it's just you match these things up, A plus B equals C, and then D plus E equals, I don't know, there's some combination there, and you come out with the answer. I forgot how to do that. Dr. Thomas Constable, the sons of God could not be fallen angels because fallen angels are what is termed devils or evil spirits. The identity of the sons of God would be nothing even remotely close to something so very wicked as a devil, though it is a little more plausible to consider the sons of God as holy angels. At least these are not horribly wicked. No, actually, that was all my statement, sorry. Constable said, sons of God is a strange title for evil angels. Well, that's a big point there. If that's all you had to go with, or to think about, or wanted to think about, ponder that for a while. The sons of God are wicked, horrible, evil angels that hate God. They're called sons of God. Yeah, so that's a big issue. And number 6, the fall of Satan. Lee Anderson says, though red text, some have argued that these passages in 2 Peter and Jude refer to the original fall of the angelic beings who followed after Satan. Yeah, I argued that one. Black text. That leaves a difficult question unanswered. Okay. Why, if these verses refer to the original sin of angels, were some angels punished by being confined and others free to roam the earth? Relatedly, why was Satan himself not among those confined? Those are things to consider. I had some answers, not about Satan, but about, well, he's in the bottomless pit. That's just my, what's the term, guess? Educated guess? Hypothesis? Hypothesis. It says Satan was in the bottomless pit. This is the time period we're talking about. In those 1,000 years, you had all these other angels that were with him, all of them there with him. Because, I didn't mention it probably before, but when Satan goes, is thrown in the bottomless pit, what about this 100 million or so devils out there that were basically under his charge? Now, Satan's not a god, but he's basically the leader of these devils. I don't know how he gets away with doing that. Maybe he's got zapper guns that can do that. I don't know, but where are all these at during this millennial kingdom on earth? Where apparently we don't have any influence by evil spirits, Satan or the devils. So where are all these devils? Just standing by in formation somewhere in outer space? Okay, well, at least it might help give an alternative explanation to it being related to Genesis 6. Constable says, 2 Peter 2 and Jude 6 appear to identify angels with this incident. However, there are no other references to angels in the context here in Genesis. There's no reference to them. In the book of Genesis, no, there's a reference to angels of God. But never angels in this section, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I don't know where angel first shows up. It might not be till Genesis 28. I didn't actually look that up. Maybe you want to. These New Testament passages probably refer to the fall of Satan, says Constable. Kind of on this a little bit more. No angels in context. Maybe these two could have gone together, but oh well. You don't have to memorize each point here. Just know about them. The red text. Here's one red text. Says John Davis, there is no other reference to angels in the context. Angels are not mentioned in the first 5 chapters of Genesis. There you go for that. Black text. To introduce them in such a narrative and in connection with such a strange, unprecedented union is unnatural and foreign to the text. It would be very bizarre for God to do that. Clear out of the blue, as we say. He puts in the other angels, but I'm not going to tell you that. He's going to use a code word for them being sons of God. And it's going to really throw some people. Wow. Don Stewart. There is nothing in the context that would identify the sons of God with the angelic host. Angels have not been mentioned in the book of Genesis to this point, and certainly nothing in the story demands we understand the sons of God as angels. Nothing demands it. Nothing even kind of would push you that way, other than going, we got the giants here, we're going to explain that one. Let's just say the giants did come out of this union. Okay, that'd be something to think about. And then also 2 Peter and Jude. And the pagan stories out there in the extra-biblical literature. Don Stewart, why didn't Moses say angels if he meant angels? There are 15 references to angels in the Pentateuch, and each time it refers to angels, it calls them, guess what? Angels. Never the sons of God. Maybe I should have had that red text, but I did not, so it's black text. The only exception is Genesis 3 when he calls them actually cherubim, which is angelic beings, I would believe. Warren Wiersbe summarizes it well on why the fallen angel's view is so inferior. He says, some interpreters view this section of Scripture as an invasion of fallen angels who cohabitated with women and produced a race of giants. But, red text, as interesting as the theory is, it creates more problems than it solves, not the least of which is the union of sexless spirit beings with flesh and blood humans. That's another big, huge problem. I got maybe 4 or 5 huge problems with the fallen angel's view. That's another one. How, pray tell, does that all work out? Even if they were able to, not marry, but be intimate with something. Black text, even if such unions did occur, could there be offspring? That's kind of what I'm thinking. There's a lot of steps here of faith, I guess, or wild thinking. Could there be offspring, and why would they be giants? And how did these giants survive the flood? Yeah. Or was there a second invasion of fallen angels after the flood? So I should have said last time when we covered this a little bit ago. But there it is. How did they get there? Or was it in the bloodline of the godly line of Noah and his family? No way. And here's kind of ending this whole thing, kind of interesting questions about devils marrying earthlings. Mostly these are my questions, just to get you thinking further. Why wouldn't these devils be taking wives and producing children for years before this and after this? Why is it just at this time period? Did they decide not to do that anymore? Were they all thrown into a dark prison? Chains of darkness, I should say. Okay, but something to think about. Why is it just now? They could greatly increase their evil influence with all these half-devil offspring roaming the earth. Why not have done it since the beginning of time and maybe God stopped it? But how did it just so happen to come upon these very intelligent creatures that the daughters of men were fair? They saw that finally. Well, same with the sons of God. Well, they saw it because they were slowly but surely becoming more and more immoral, more and more ungodly. And they started seeing, maybe that would be a term we could say that's what it's meaning. They started seeing, little by little they saw this. So one day they go, hey guys, yeah, I just saw the same thing in my head. These guys are good looking. Also, red text, why would these devils bother with taking wives? That whole process, marrying. Back then it was a lot more complicated than it is today in general. You can study that on your own. Why wouldn't they just simply take and rape any and every woman that they desired and spread their evil seed that way if that's what they wanted to do? Was marriage somehow beneficial to them? Is the devil going to be, well, I've got to be compassionate to this poor lady and I don't want to just rape her. I'm thinking I'll marry her and she needs someone around to kind of guide her and love her, and a devil wouldn't be thinking that way at all. Ludicrous. Why would they follow man's and not God's protocol for producing offspring through marriage? Why would they follow man's protocol for producing offspring through marriage? Do it man's way. What am I saying? Back then you were in trouble if you didn't marry someone to get offspring. If you just had offspring, fornicating outside of marriage. Nowadays it's like, no big deal. Back then they might stone you, might kill you. Black text. Was there a wedding ceremony? Here comes the bride, all dressed in white, and here's a devil. Did the devils ask permission of the daughter's father first? I guess one could say that the devils went incognito and presented themselves as human men and played that role for many years. I mean, it could be. I guess until their wife died or until they got bored and suddenly disappeared from the scene and then went and married another woman. Which they could have done. I mean, if you're just thinking wild, like we're already kind of thinking on this. Wiersbe says, even if fallen angels could make themselves appear in human bodies, why would they want to marry women and settle down on earth? Certainly their wives and neighbors would detect something different about them. This would create problems. So yeah, honey, When I first met you, I noticed there was something just a little bit, and I looked in your eyes and there was just something something different. Like you have no soul. Well, yeah. Let me do Genesis 6:3 here, and we'll take a break. All right, there's that. The fallen angels view is done, basically. I don't know where you are in your view of all this, but you're definitely much more educated on it. A lot more thoughts, I'm sure, going through your mind. It did me. Verse 3, let's just look at this for a little bit. And the Lord said, "My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years. My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years." That's all put together. And as with this, thinking about the sons of God and daughters of men cohabitating. Red text, David says, "The reference to 120 years has been understood by some to refer to man's future longevity, and by others as the time yet remaining before the coming of the flood. In addition to the interpretation that this was simply the time remaining before Adam's death." Three things there, three interpretations of this possible. 120 years he's talking about is, text alert. We'll wait for it to end. Being attacked by devils? What? Okay, thank you. So the three are, that's how much, that's a new longevity time period for man, down to 120 years. Number two, it's how many years until the flood comes. Or number three, time remaining before Adam's death. Which do you choose? Black text. Warren Wiersbe, though, is that all his? Yeah. The 120-year limit expressed in verse 3 probably refers to the years until the flood would come. God is long-suffering with lost sinners, but there comes a time when judgment must fall. During that day of grace, Noah prepared the ark and gave witness that judgment was coming, the same message Enoch had given during his lifetime. God gave his message in the mouth of two witnesses, but the people wouldn't listen. So you can see there in verse 3, let's look at it for a second here. He was striving with man because of what the sons of God, how they were compromising to the point of marrying ungodly women, and then it was producing, in general, ungodly offspring, and so forth and so forth. And he was striving with man because of their immorality, the direction they were going. So, yet his days, meaning the days of man, shall be 120 years. Whose days? Well, what is the antecedent? Yet his days, whose days? Man! I'm going to yell meanly. It's man. It's not Noah, it's not Adam. I may be closer to Adam. But it is in the context of the flood, so it's something to think about. All right, going on, Don Stewart says, it could mean that humanity's lifespan would now be shortened from the long periods previously lived. Yeah, to 120 years. Yeah, that sounds right. And you follow that there. These long years had been emphasized in Genesis 5. Because of their gross sin, God decided to shorten the amount of time that they would live. Yeah, I agree. Indeed, red text, Moses, the writer of the first 5 books of the Bible, lived to that outer limit of 120 years. That sounds like it fits. Black text, most scholars, liberal and conservative alike, support the idea that 120 years refers to a period of grace or probation in between God giving Noah his instructions and the flood finally coming upon the earth, says Trevor Major. That's his view, I don't agree. There were at least 120 years between Noah receiving his instructions from God soon after his sons were born, at which time he was 500 years old, and the flood commencing when Noah was 600 years old. So, I don't understand how there's at least 120 years? I would say there's 100 years at the most. Thus, the time frame separating these two events is consistent with the period of grace interpretation. Something to consider. Don Stewart, this is the first recorded speech of God since Genesis 5:2, well, not that far back. Red text, chapter 5 focused on individuals. Now God speaks to humankind as a whole. Man. Black text, I believe that the Spirit was the Holy Spirit here, listed in a small s, due to being a non-proper noun, that's what it is there. At least the word it is there. Red text, man's antecedent would be, verse 3, what was man? Men on earth. Verses 1 and 2. Thus, mankind. More than one man, that's for sure. Black text, and would curse them with a lifespan of only 120 years. And red text, verse 3 is related to verses 1 and 2 in that God is striving with mankind, specifically here with the Sethites, the godly line, taking wives of the heathen women. The key point here is that God is referring to the sons of God when he says man and flesh and 120 years. No fallen angels fit that description. What? Man, flesh, and 120 years. They don't cease to live after 120 years. No way. All right, now you got a fun one coming up in just a little bit, the giants and mythology.